All right. Joining us again in studio, Kate Nagel, news chief of GoLocalProv.com. Kate, thanks for coming in this afternoon.
Glad to be here.
Tony Jones, the man, the legend, the godfather, if you will, of new media here in Rhode Island. Tony, welcome back to the show.
So Kate Nagel and I are literally in the hot seat tonight because to let everybody in on a little inside radio, it's 100 degrees in the studio. Now, I've been shopping this event to multiple media outlets throughout the week, and most AM radio stations I was at couldn't afford to have heat at all. So we're a little on the plus side tonight on the coalition.
Tony, tell us about. Well, first of all, Tony is, of course, was the candidate for lieutenant governor for the state of Rhode Island under the Libertarian Party. Really, an astonishing results. Got in excess of 10,000 votes. Best turnout, best vote count for any Libertarian candidate in Rhode Island state history,
and nationwide, actually.
Yeah, and Tony embodies a key concept of the spirit of libertarianism, and that is voluntarism. The notion that we as a community can do a better job of helping each other than a government which is sort of implanted in us at great expense and run by a bunch of careerists. Tony, coming up this week, tell us about your latest charity effort.
And I'd like to come back at some point and have a larger discussion on volunteerism and civic involvement, because as I mentioned earlier this week in a few outlets, I think that I'm 33 going on 34, and I think it's my generation, it's the millennials and younger that really need to step up their game over the next few years. So we have a great group coming together. There's folks from the marijuana movement. There's going to be vendors, musicians. We're all coming together this Friday to raise funds and more specifically physical donations for the area's food banks. So we're looking for actual canned goods, warm blankets, toiletries, toothpaste, fill a backpack. Because after the holiday season, everybody's in the giving mood up to the holidays, then kind of reality sets in, everybody gets their credit card bills in the mail. And so right after the new year, physical donations especially, but monetary donations also, take a huge decline after the holiday season. So we want to kind of hedge that going into the colder season. So we'll split those donations between the Rhode Island Community Food Bank and my local food bank, which is the North Kingston Food Pantry. So that's going to be this Friday at Manchester 65. Of course, everybody knows West Warwick, Rhode Island, new nightclub, a business actually opening in West Warwick, Rhode Island, if you will. So we're trying to support the club as a new business and as a friend of this show and as a friend of a lot of different things, but also do that for the food bank. And we're looking towards something that is going to be for all ages. So we're going to have vendors set up in the back room. Anything you could think of, there'll be a vendor for in the back room. We're going to start off with acoustic music. We're going to go into a Jimi Hendrix tribute band, and then we'll go into the stuff, P.O., that you and I love, the punk rock, a little bit. There's a band on the bill that is so punk rock that I can't even say their name on the radio. That's how punk rock they are.
But they're going to be really good.
And really loud.
And really loud. And really in your face. No, that's great. Now, you also run Rhode Island Free Radio. And so information can be found on Rhode Island Free Radio. So
right.
Links to this.
rifreeradio.org. And then, of course, Manchester65.com. And, we're trying to bring out as many people as possible. And it's going to be a great Friday night. There's not much going on. On the other side of that, events-wise, this is a great time of year to have an event because throughout the spring and summer you have a ton of competition. This time of year, everybody's a little shy and there ain't much going on. So it's looking like a great turnout, not just because of the hard work we put in, but because we're not going to have much competition on a Friday night in the middle of winter. So,
and by the way, just on an editorial note, there is a Stop and Shop on your way to Manchester 65, right off of 95. I think, what is it, the really good Progresso soups are like $1.50. Don't be cheap. Stop by, pick up a dozen, okay? You're going to have a great night. There's going to be tunes. There's going to be demon alcohol. Everything you need in life will actually be present within that one building.
Incidentally, Narragansett Beer, one of our sponsors, providing all kind of swag for us to give out for raffles. But this time of year also, you can go to Job Lot or one of the cheaper retailers and just get a ton of toiletries. These folks, they're living on the street. They're going through shelters. They need toothpaste, toothbrushes, deodorant, soap, warm socks. So, you can buy a ton of stuff for low dough.
Excellent. Folks, again, you can find out more information about this on Facebook.com. There'll be links on the coalition page, but also go to Rhode Island Free Radio, rifreeradio.org.
And if you're as fat and white and as unhip as Pat Ford, we still have a home for you at this event with some acoustic music to open up and a Jimi Hendrix tribute band, which I know is near and dear to your heart.
They like me. They really like me. Well, okay, so it's a great...
Pat, let me just jump in here and say, I think I'll be there Friday night, and I want to make this rule. Anybody who comes in with canned pumpkin pie mix or veg-all is not getting into the club. That's where we draw the line. Pumpkin, one pie and veg-all, that's it. You can't come in.
So stop and frisk is all about canned goods. Okay. Well, again, that is a wonderful segue into the political realities of Rhode Island, because ultimately the results, the fruits of this most recent election are all driven by, well, what we'll call the economy. Again, joining us, Kate Nagel, news editor of Go Local Prov. I also want to mention that she is, I guess, are you a regular member now of the Lively Experiment?
That's quasi-regular when I get the call up. I get the, hey, can you come on the show?
All right, because you may be the only person capable of making that, in fact, lively. Wow. So please. I don't think I was on the list.
Hey, it's going to have a new look, a new set. There's going to be you just stay tuned, Pat. It's
all
there.
The NFL did have a strike year, so you might get in there.
They're going to be using Bob Venturini's old set to redo it.
Okay, post-election now. Now, we've gone through the silly season. First of all, what was remarkable to me was just, I think I was the only person in Rhode Island on the current theme who was not asked to be on a transition committee, all right? I mean, when you got to the point where the Assistant Secretary of State who became Secretary of State had a transition committee, what did she do, sit in the room and talk to herself? I mean, for the love of God. And she seems like a wonderful candidate, a wonderful potential, but we've gone a little mad. Now we get into the meat of the issues. We get the appointments. Now, I'm going to quickly go down the list. And actually, let me just go to maryland.org or maryland.gov, okay? Stephen Newman, Chief of Staff from Maryland. By the way, folks, if you think we're nuts, at some point we'll have an entire show about the air tax in Maryland, or the rain tax, or the whatever tax. I mean, if you want an epic blue state failure, I mean, Maryland was the bluest of blues, and the guy O'Malley down there managed to get it set up so that his transition got punted. Maryland is now a red state. So we get the diaspora from Maryland. Stephen Newman, Chief of Staff. Commerce Secretary, Stephen Pryor. All right. This is a gentleman, I guess, who was from Connecticut.
I was going to say by way of Connecticut, right?
By way of Connecticut, who was the head of education there. All sorts of ethical issues. Anya Wallach, a name you may not know, has been asked to replace Christine Ferguson as head of the troubled, if you will, Rhode Island Health Exchange. She was most recently associated with the doomed single-payer attempt in Vermont. Let's see, go down the list. The head of DLT, Charlie Tuna, Fogarty, out of a job. What did we say last week? The biggest irony in state Rhode Island government. He now gets to get an unemployment check from the very organization that he ran into the ground. We get this guy Jensen, who's also from Maryland. I guess on one hand, Kate, we're literally, sweeping out the hacks that just pervaded Rhode Island government, the Mutual Congratulations Society. But are we replacing them with agenda-driven ideologues who ultimately have not proven to be successful at any level in any of the governments they come from?
Well, it's going to be interesting, to say the least, Pat, to see how this all plays out, because at the executive level, we see, as you mentioned, huge shakeups, a lot of out-of-towners with experience where they're coming from. But don't forget, we've got a General Assembly that, with Speaker Mattiello and Senate President Paiva Weed, when you talk about the de facto Rhode Island kind of royalty, it'll be interesting to see the interplay between the governor's office with these folks who have probably been learning up obviously on what's taking place here, who's really going to be driving the bus. As you said, they might be coming in with their thoughts and their, whether it be experience or agendas, but it's we haven't quite seen this. Obviously it's having folks discuss. We all know that the governor-elect is gone to a larger stage before, could be continuing to look at a larger one. It's going to be a very interesting, I believe, General Assembly session in first 6 months with those kind of two competing ideologies of who's at the General Assembly and who the governor has on her team.
I would call it, it's going to be interesting the same way food poisoning is interesting, where like you never really know where it's going to come out. You're never really sure which end to point towards the bowl. So that's how I'm defining this interesting session. So during the break, I mentioned, we're getting these cast-offs of other state governments, and we seem to be becoming the island of misfit toys. But I think, Kate, I think this is a pretty solid assumption, and I thought it was interesting to see her kind of pick off these old boy, lifelong Rhode Island folks that are at the heads of these departments. So I'm going to coin it right now. I'm going to call her Gina the Cleaner.
Gina the Cleaner.
Gina the Cleaner. She seems to be knocking out kind of the cobwebs in a lot of these places. So do you think...
Wait, was that like the guy in Pulp Fiction?
Exactly. Keitel in Pulp Fiction. So I want to ask Kate, do you think that this is a calculated move on her part, as kind of a shot across the bow to this kind of cobwebby, fossilized old boy network?
I think that's what it appears. It is the consummate shakeup. And again, between what she did as general treasurer with pension reform and what she is looking to achieve as governor, I think it's sort of the proving ground of, hey, this is what I can achieve, and I need these folks to help make it happen. As we said, as she possibly looks at a larger stage than Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Now, let me play philosopher here. Could you imagine just for a second if any of these appointees took the appointment and then did the research? Like, let me Google Rhode Island. I've just accepted this new job. They'd kind of give it a little go.
I signed up for what? This wasn't a reality show.
But on the heels of that too, do you see? Do you, as somebody kind of on the objective side looking in, see a little bit of an ideological difference between Gina Raimondo and Nick Mattiello? Do you think one of them skews a little more right or a little more left than the other, or are they both Democrats in sheep's clothing?
Yeah,
basically?
I think they're both pro-business Democrats is perhaps a moniker to give it, but. We'll see, when the sort of first step she takes, with the budget especially, how that looks and how the General Assembly reacts. I mean, that's what we know drives the bus up there. It'll be interesting to see, again, the imprint of these out-of-towners, whether or not they, again, bring new sort of ideas to the table, and she embraces those as well. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, when's the last time we had a Democratic governor and a Democratic General Assembly?
I'd argue that we've never had a Democratic General Assembly, but that's my personal bias.
So, yeah, we'll see.
Going forward, does she have any sort of honeymoon? I mean, she, again, is another governor without a plurality.
Yeah.
I mean, does she have any sort of honeymoon?
With not having a mandate, I don't see a honeymoon. I think it's people are looking for action and proof in the pudding from day one.
How does the various union groups that bet the ranch on Clay Pell and everyone else but Gina, how do they reemerge? How do they?
That is the $1 million question, Pat. I mean, as you said, and I think that was one of the things we pointed out in our kind of year-end wrap-ups as you said, they bet the ranch on Clay Pell and ultimately split the vote and let who they did not want to come through. I don't know how that looks moving forward.
Because the next issue on the horizon, of course, is 2016. 2016, if you flash back, you've got to go back 6 years, to a point in time when you were involved in a primary run-up that meant anything. And if you flash back then, it was the two Lynch boys, or as I like to call them, our own little Michael versus Fredo contest.
I thought you were going to say Lynch mob, and I was like, don't say it.
I won't say which one I thought was Fredo. Each, in a sense, picking off one of the two candidates. One deciding to go with Hillary, one deciding to go with Barack Obama. I believe Patrick Lynch took the wild card, went with Barack Obama, doubled down and won.
That's almost the blue and the gray, for God's sake.
Well, exactly. So how do you see any party lines evolving in that direction? I mean, do you see the beginning of any political organizations, or is anybody taking a stand on the Democratic side? The Republican side, of course, doesn't matter. So
I think it might be early yet, Pat. I mean, if there are, I'm not necessarily privy to. Obviously, I think we're going to see some jockeying and posturing start quite quickly.